Please, the court, counsel, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. 6 shots in the back. That's what this case is about. No matter how Mr. Nolder, Mr. Collins twist and turn with the pointer, it comes back to 6 shots in the back. The state has the burden of proof, as the judge has just told you, meaning we have the duty to go forward, and we have. We brought you a total of, I think, 19 witnesses. You're going to have close to 200 items, or maybe in excess of 200 items. I haven't actually counted them all, counting the pictures individually. Back there in the jury room with you. You're going to have the door. And I submit to you that the question in this case isn't whether the state has proven its case. We've proven the offenses. Judge just gave you the definition for the 2 offenses charged, and I submit to you that we have established, by proof beyond a reasonable doubt, all the elements of each charge. That in count 1, Mr. Meade knowingly caused serious physical harm to Casey Goodson that resulted in his death. Now, we've heard over and over again, because most of the witnesses were police officers, and they're trained and universally trained. That when they fire their weapon, they fire it to stop the threat. And over again, we heard, you're not trained to commit felonious assault. But pointing a weapon at someone, regardless of your purpose, and the judge has told you it doesn't matter what the purpose is knowingly, and firing it at that person is knowingly causing serious physical harm when you strike the person. So regardless of whether the purpose is to stop the threat, it's still felonious assault. So don't be hoodwinked by any kind of an argument that, hey, the firing of a weapon by a police officer is just to stop the threat. That's felonious assault. And when it causes death, and the firing is not justified, that's a murder. And understand that police officers do not have the right to fire their weapons just because there is a threat or a risk. A risk is the potential of a threat. That doesn't justify firing your weapon. And a threat has to be 2 things. It has to be immediate, imminent, and it has to be a threat of serious physical harm or death to the police officer or to someone else. Otherwise, firing the gun is not justified. Otherwise, it's moved from proper law enforcement to a criminal act. So what's this case really come down to? It comes down to whether the discharging of his weapon, whether Mr. Meade's firing that weapon 6 times, and we don't know whether it was in automatic mode or semi-automatic. So we don't know whether he pulled the trigger once. We don't know whether if it was in automatic and he followed the conventional training of firing in bursts. He fired it twice. It's interesting that you got 3-3 in the groupings of the shots. We don't know because he didn't tell us in his statement. His detailed statement that was to explain in minute detail, he left out whether it was on automatic or semi-automatic. But we do know he fired 6 bullets out of that weapon. And whether he did it in a full automatic mode or a semi-automatic mode doesn't change the fact that that weapon, his firing of that weapon, caused the death of Casey Goodson. The question in the case is, was the firing of the weapon justified? And that burden isn't on the state of Ohio to establish that. That burden rests on the defense. They have the burden to prove to you by a preponderance of the evidence that the shooting was justified. If it's a tie, if when you evaluate everything, you determine, gee, I'm just not sure, you know, I don't know, they lose. They haven't established it because it's by a preponderance. It's not by equal evidence. It's not by some evidence. It's by a preponderance of the evidence. Judge has just told you about the defense of justification. And it can be confusing because the defense involves what the particular officer knew and the facts and circumstances around that, but it is not his mindset. It's that of an objectively reasonable officer. If it was just what the officer said, then every shooting would be justified because every officer is going to tell you, well, you know, I had to shoot because of this, this, and this. So you have to evaluate from the evidence that's presented what a reasonably objective officer would have concluded. So how do you decide that? you decide it by evaluating all the evidence and comparing and contrasting it. There were two use of force experts presented to you. Mr. Scanlon, who was a police officer for, I believe, 33 years. And he brought forth his testimony based upon his experiences as a working police officer for 33 years. And Professor Stoughton, who was a police officer in the patrol area for about 5 years, I believe he said, and then he became an investigator, but still in a police-like role for about 5 or 6 years. But then he moved on into an academic career. And so he's the academic who studies policing, who evaluates policing. And they had, the disagreements between them had to do with the tactics that were employed, the decisions made up until the shooting. But interestingly, their opinions are identical relative to the shooting. Both of them told you that if in fact you determine from all the evidence that Casey Goodson turned and pointed his gun at the defendant, the shooting is justified. Case over. But likewise, both of them told you that if the evidence does not support that finding, that if the evidence doesn't establish that Casey Goodson turned and pointed his weapon at the defendant, the shooting is not justified. And at that point, your verdict has to be guilty. So, taking all the complex, which we lawyers can make everything complex, no offense, but taking all the complexities in the instructions, what it boils down to from your standpoint is, has the evidence established that Casey turned and pointed his gun at the defendant? That's what the case boils down to. So, what evidence has been produced that that's what Casey did? That he turned and pointed? Well, you have the written statement of the defendant. And you'll have it back there. You can study it. And it goes into detail about his training and about, you know, he has good eyesight and all of these different things. And then it says, and he says on page 10 of his statement, talking about Mr. Goodson. But the moment after his shoulders drooped, he, Mr. Goodson, Casey, quickly turned his head and torso in my, Mr. Meade's, direction to confirm my location, while he suddenly and unexpectedly started to raise his right arm back. As he did so, I saw he was still holding the gun, raising the barrel upwards in my direction. Okay. There's some evidence that he turned and pointed the gun. What other evidence is there? Well, the only other evidence that exists is arguably the testimony of Dr. Desmullen, who told you, didn't tell you it had happened, told you it was possible, because remember, we know that this door was between the defendant, Casey Goodson. And how do we know that? 3 bullet holes in the screen, an impact point at the top of the screen. Physical evidence. Something important to remember when you're evaluating the evidence in this case. Physical evidence doesn't lie. It just is. Physical evidence can't be untruthful. It just is. People lie. People are untruthful. Physical evidence has no motivation. It just is. People have motivation to tell the truth, and motivation not to tell the truth. Those are things that you're going to have to take into consideration. And when you evaluate Mr. Meade's written statement, you will need to take that into consideration. Is it truthful? Is it accurate? Well, we know one area it's not accurate. Mr. Meade described this encounter at the intersection of Carl and Ferris Road. He says, I looked right, north to ensure the road was clear, and I saw a dark-colored hatchback driving southbound on Carl Road. The vehicle approached the intersection in the left-hand lane, signaling, turn signal, that he was turning left east on Ferris Road. The vehicle stopped. That's what he said. The vehicle stopped. He didn't say it slowed. He said it stopped. He went on to wait for the northbound traffic to clear. So what he's saying is there's cars coming northbound. You know, we've all made left-hand turns. We know that, you know, you can't turn in front of somebody if they're coming through the intersection that you're turning in. So the vehicle stopped to wait for northbound traffic to clear. And as it did so, I saw the driver had a black handgun with an extended magazine in his right hand. He had the gun raised above the steering wheel, held it sideways. Now, bear in mind, he's got it in his right hand. Mr. Meade is located to the left. He said, held it sideways, i.e. palm down. So this extended clip, which emerges maybe an inch or two out of the gun, he says he could see when it's palm down holding sideways. Of course, he saw it later on the underneath Mr. Goodson when he turned him over. Palm down, aimed towards the windshield. He was repeatedly straightening his arm and forward, such that he was pumping the gun towards the windshield, then pulling it back. He appeared to be yelling as he pumped the gun, but I could not tell what, if anything he was saying. Okay, pumping the gun, appears to be yelling. A lot of activity right there as he stopped at the waiting to turn. A car traveling northbound on Carl Road approached the intersection. Approached, not in the intersection, not clearing the intersection, but approached the intersection. And the individual aimed the gun at the driver of the car. So now he's either, aiming. The individual tracked the driver with the gun as the car traveled north, but I could not see whether the driver reacted to the gun. So he's saying, car's coming, he's tracking it like that as he comes all the way through the intersection. Play 13A.
I apologize, Tim, or pass. You're going to put the password back in. It's not working. Was it working one? Oh, working two. Sorry.
My colleague can get the computer working. So let's watch what he just described in his written statement. No stop. He didn't stop. The car that was in the intersection was exiting the intersection as Casey is approaching. This is his detailed statement. What do we know? We know this came January 4th to the investigators. We can also probably assume that Mr. Meade had no awareness that there was a video of this interaction. Is that truthful? Who's got a motivation here to deceive? Physical evidence doesn't lie. People do. So what evidence is there against the idea that, or the suggestion that Casey turned and pointed the gun? Well, we can start with, he's got 6 shots in his back. They're not in his front. They're not in his side. Well, yeah, there's one that's kind of in the far left side, back side. You've seen the wound. But think about that. You know, because they're going to talk hoodoo and, you know, all this. If there's going to be a shot in the side, wouldn't it be the shot that's the side that's turning towards? What do we know about the shots? Well, they're kind of grouped. You know, you got the upper shots and the lower shots. And Dr. Shepler said to you, you know, I can't tell you what order they came in. I don't know what shot number 1, 2, or 3 is. She labeled them as she examined them, you know, and nobody's maintaining that the labels are the absolute order they came in. But there's several things that we can probably reasonably conclude from her examination. First conclusion that I think we can make is that the 3 upper shots, mid-back, left mid-back, or upper back, I'm sorry, midline, and then, you know, you have, and you, it might be easier if I just hold up. Okay. All right. We got this grouping up here. These 2 shots, she said, would have caused like spinal shock, which would have at least momentarily paralyzed his legs, causing him to fall. These 3 lower shots, you have a sharp angle, upward angle, and a sharp upward angle there. How do you get those? He's got to be bent over, like falling. And I think it's reasonable to conclude that if he was bent over when he was shot, and those are the first shots, he didn't then straighten up to get the upper shots. So here are the first ones. These are the last ones. Okay. All right. I don't want to belabor things too long. you will have all the evidence. You can look at it closely. You also have Dr. Bauer's testimony. I know you were all attentive during that. And he places Casey inside the kitchen, not in the doorway. We know that there's no damage to the doorway other than the storm door, and that all the bullets go on into the kitchen. Casey's keys are in the door. We've got a Subway bag that we know he was carrying because he bought it, 5 minutes before. That's laying on the floor off to the left of the position that he comes to rest on the floor. We have the gun under his chest. Remember, Officer Rosser said it was under his chest. Is that consistent with it being in his hands? We know the bag was in his hands. Is that under his chest? Is that underneath him? It's off to the side. If the gun's in his hands, and we know he had to open the door, so you need to have the keys to do that, because the keys are still in the door. Pretty soon you run out of hands. So I submit that the physical evidence suggests that the gun wasn't in his hands, that it was in a flimsy holster that was in his belt. You have, even Dr. DeMullen says, yeah, the lower shots, that they match up with the holes in the storm door, and the level has to be at the kitchen. So he's got him kind of teetering, as he steps in, because once you're in the kitchen, how do you turn and point the gun around the door to become this imminent threat? You can't. Dr. Bauer tried to do it in his, all of his different programming and stuff, and he said, I just couldn't make things line up. Mr. DeMullen makes it line up, but he's got him with his left foot on the threshold and his right foot hanging out here in space. And Dr. Bauer told you about how, from a biomechanics standpoint, when you step up, all the weight is on the foot you're stepping up on. How do you then turn and reach around the door? Physical evidence doesn't lie, ladies and gentlemen. People do. That's what this case comes down to. Have they proven that he turned and pointed the gun? They have to rely on Mr. Meade's statement. That certainly discussing the initial encounter is grossly inaccurate. Grossly. I mean, that's not a small mistake. He's embellished it. Just like doesn't bother to, he's going to rely on, I got a little placard on my vest and somebody's going to see it from 100 yards away. He wants to be, as he's pursuing, the smart tactical move is let them know you're a police officer. He's got a light package, and you saw the video of what that looks like. He doesn't use it. But after the shooting, while they're still trying to clear the house to get the medics in, what the heck is he doing? Is he trying to get the medics in? He's gonna hold the medics as he goes across the yard and flicks on his lights. Why would you do that? Is that perhaps a sign of recognizing, whoa, this wasn't a good shoot? Is that, I want to be able to cover things up? Want to be able to say that I had my lights on? Body cam doesn't lie. Physical evidence doesn't lie. People do. I'm gonna wrap up here, ladies and gentlemen. There's a lot more I could say, but we want to be judicious in our time, and I'm going to sit down and let the defense get up here. But I want to leave you with one thing, because there is another statement from Mr. Meade, and I submit to you it's a bit more accurate. And that was on the porch on that day that was caught by Seth Penny, the Minerva Park police officer, on his body cam when Mr. Meade is speaking with another officer, and the other officer says, "Hey, I missed the call. You know, what happened?" And then Mr. Meade steps off the porch to tell family members that they need to go down further in the yard, and he comes back up. You got it queued up there, Gary.
Mm-hmm. We need to. I hope this sounds ready.
Yes.
They're saying that it's their nephew. He came out to the street, gun in his hand, going to the side door, pulling in with a gun.
You guys were pulling out?
Yes, as I was pulling up.
Yeah, Joey asked for us to go.
Doing this. Who's in charge here? I was one that was on the scene. I was one that initiated.
Notice what he said there? You know, what happened? Did he say, the guy turned and pointed his gun at me. I didn't have a choice. No. He said he pulled up with a gun, coming from the street, gun in his hand, as I was pulling up. Their own expert told you that's not justification. Evaluate all the evidence. I've only touched on some of it. There's a lot more. Ask yourself, if Casey was going to turn and point the gun, why would he?
Your Honor. Basis? May we approach?
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, there's other evidence. You know what it is. We've tried to be meticulous in presenting it. I leave you with this. Does it make sense that someone is going to point a weapon with the safety on? Does that make sense to you? That's how the gun was recovered. And I haven't even talked about the AirPods, YouTube music. All of those things are there for your consideration. I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that when you evaluate all the evidence, you will conclude that the defense has not proven that Casey Goodson turned and pointed the gun, and that the physical evidence establishes not only that he didn't do that, but that he wasn't even aware Mr. Meade was there.